Day 29.
Sometimes I feel like these trees, I've definitely had quite a few branches taken off over the years, and there's a few scars, but in some way it's more beautiful as a result. I'm not saying that I'm more beautiful, more that my being or my character have been sort of formed through it in a beautiful way. Step by step. Sure.
Pas rigolo, hein?
I'm very happy.
No.
Got a masculine identity.
Yeah. And you have stairs?
It's the incredible thing about Europe, like, it's so developed. There's buildings and riverbanks all the way along, even little tunnels, all the way along this part of the river. Mind blowing. So another day done. We've reached Portomarín, and as you can see, I'm sat beside the river, nearby what looks like some kind of a weir thing they set up, these V-shaped weirs. maybe to catch fish. There's a little house, like a little kind of almost like a little boathouse or a guardhouse in the centre of the bay. So not sure if they were maybe funneling the fish in there, or no idea, to be honest, but it looks very old and it stood the test of time. Behind me you've got the wall. It's also been around a while, but it's made with concrete, so presumably not Roman. So another day. Yesterday was raining quite a bit, and I was in quite a kind of a deep mental state, you could say, and I wasn't in the philosophizing mood. But today, I'll give it a crack. I guess had some really interesting conversations. Maybe one I'll start with is having a chat with a French woman who we chatted about some fairly profound kind of psychological sort of ideas. There's actually a book called Abrazar tu niño interior, which in Spanish means hug your inner child. And we were talking about basically our inner child, and sort of getting in touch with that, and becoming more aware of that, because we all have wounds, we all have injuries from when we were younger. It's unavoidable as a human, and having human parents as we do, if we're lucky. In some cases people don't have parents, maybe they're orphans, but we even although we're lucky, we still they're only human, and we always end up with some wounds. So one of the things she said was like, one way to tell when your inner child is present is when you overreact to things. So maybe you're just having a chat with somebody, and there's one topic that comes up, and you get really excited about it. She said that can be like an indicator that there's something there that you could have a little think about, and dig a little deeper on. One of the topics we discussed was how in relationships, how we're attracted to the familiar. So if you had an extreme example, like an alcoholic parent, you might be attracted to an alcoholic. In a less extreme example, if you had a detached parent, you might be, or a parent who kind of detached themselves from you when you needed them, you might form relationships with people like that. Earlier in the day I was chatting with another friend, another new friend who'd had an experience on the Camino where it was like the Camino was telling her, hey, you've got this childhood wound. It was sort of here comes the rain, welcome to Galicia. 4 seasons in one day kind of place. It's amazing. It's like the UK in Spain. But yeah, she was saying that somehow her father would give her attention, but then become distracted or become more interested in other things. And she had a similar experience here on the Camino with another pilgrim that she met, who took the place of her father, as it were, and pointed to this wound in her life. For me, like, I've been doing a bit of soul searching the last few days, and I certainly have some of my own wounds, as we all do. And one of the ones that I chatted about with the French woman was, let's say, being attracted to people who kind of somehow I get in trouble with them, or I get told off a lot, and not just a little bit, but a lot, and get lectured and that kind of stuff, and that is something that I had in my childhood and my teenage years, and actually it's something that I have now. So in my relationship now, and that it's very interesting how we're attracted to the familiar. Begs the question, what can you do about it? Well, it's a very good question, and probably a life's work. It's not something that you find the answer to on a 1-month walk across Spain. It's something that you spend a life, slowly chipping away at, and trying to understand. And each person that comes into your life comes for a reason, and points you to a new learning and a new kind of, in a way, an understanding about yourself, and that's meant to be in some sense. It's slowly wearing away as this water is wearing away at the weir structure, slowly wearing away at those wounds that we have in our lives. And we can wear those wounds externally, in tattoos, or in the clothes we wear, in the way we we do our hair. I don't know if my hair tells you too much, but yeah, or we can have them internally. But yeah, obviously, very important to get to know your inner child, and to realise that it's trying to say something to you. Like a kid might be trying to tell its mum, "Hey, I'm hungry," or "Hey, I've pooped my nappy," or "Hey, I'm tired." The baby can't say those words, so has to communicate by crying, and that's kind of the idea with this inner child, that we have to try to decipher and understand what it's trying to say to us, which is difficult. I mean, I'll admit I don't really have the first clue how to do it. I actually printed out, like about a year ago, I think, I printed out a picture of me as a kid, baby Paul. And yeah, it was cool to kind of, look into baby Paul's eyes and just sort of chat to him. And this wasn't baby Paul, actually. It was toddler or even slightly older, maybe 2-3 years old, Paul. So, already by that time, there was a bit of a, you could say, like a hole in my eyes, and by that I don't mean my pupil. There was a kind of some sort of an emptiness there. Like when you look at the photo, I was a cute little tacker, but yeah. I've grown up a bit since then, but there was already there was already some wounds, and I'm obviously still coming to terms with those, I mean, the trouble is you don't know what they are half the time. But they come up in our relationships, they come up in our careers, our relationships at work. They are apparent. So how do we grow and how do we learn from them? Well, somehow building this relationship with the inner child is kind of what the chat I had today that was kind of the conclusion. It was profound chat, and then came to this town, stood on the top of that bridge, which you saw some footage of, and it was a powerful feeling standing on top of that bridge. Like, I don't know what it was, but the sun was shining over the forgive my shivering, it's getting a little cold. The sun was shining over the water and reflecting, and it looked like 1,000 diamonds. And standing up above it all was a magical kind of thing, and that was my experience. Other people came here when it wasn't sunny, and they thought it was somehow grim and looked like a war zone, which I can understand because there's all these ruins on the sides of the river, and even in the river. I can understand how you would think that, but for me it was a totally different experience, and it's funny how that can happen. But just the sun was shining over there, and I love looking at water, and I love looking at water flowing. I love looking at waterfalls. There's something just about waterfalls that I can stare at a waterfall and just be completely lost in the moment. As in, like, when you look at the top of a waterfall and you're watching the water come down, so you look at one piece of water and you follow it all the way down, and then you repeat. That's something I love to do, and I get totally lost in it. I lose track of time, a bit like staring into a fire. But then the same even with the water flowing through here. There was something quite profound and quite spiritual about it, and I felt kind of emotionally touched by it in some way. Sounds weird, I know, but honest truth, and it was quite a beautiful experience. And I had a little thought when I walked into the town that maybe there's some little deeper meaning and symbology to it, in the sense that we are reaching towards the final destination, Santiago, and we've walked a long way, and somehow crossing this big river was maybe crossing some internal river inside me, getting to the other side safely and dry. It was just a little thought, a passing thought, but it has been an amazing journey. So that journey continues, and tomorrow we'll keep walking, and keep discovering. Until then, bye bye. Nothing like a good old recovery sesh by the river after another long day's walk. Well, not so long today, and a bit of philosophizing. So you can... Yoy! Yeah, that's pretty cold. It's definitely cold, but it's probably just the right temperature. It's quite silty, this water, actually, as you can probably tell. Not sure why. Maybe some horrific environmental catastrophes upstream, or maybe natural reasons. No idea. But I do know that I've got no chance of seeing yabbies, so if you hear me scream, assume the worst. The thing about recovery sessions is they're always painful to begin with. So when you first put your feet into the cold water, it actually hurts. It's that cold. But after some time, it sort of mellows out, and you feel kind of, I don't know, peaceful. But there's some kind of irony, because you're putting yourself in pain to avoid, for a short period, relatively short period, to avoid future pain when you're walking the next day or for the next week. And I think there's some analogy to life in that, because by confronting some of these childhood kind of things, these wounds, these scary things inside us which maybe we refuse to confront, which are maybe not the wounds, but there are some other things, the shadow, as we sort of spoke about earlier, to use the Jungian term. It's painful, but you do it, and it's kind of an exercise, and then the next day you're sort of in less pain, the next year, the rest of your life, and so it's worth it. And then there's a compounding effect to that, which I don't think we often think about, but I think as high school finance would tell us, or high school maths, that things compound over time, and if you leave something festering for a long period of time, it gets worse. But it slowly gets worse. I'll do it this way, and then it really starts to exponentially get worse. Whereas if we're slowly on the improve, but after many years, it goes exponentially up, and we really, it starts building on itself and basically gaining momentum, snowballing, and that's kind of compound interest. And to bring together recovery sessions, long walks, psychology, and compound interest, I think it's fair to say that tackling the more difficult things. I was doing a bit of that yesterday, hence my lack of philosophizing yesterday. But tackling some of those difficult things in our lives, in our past, even the things that we don't have a sense of, but they're somehow lurking beneath the surface. Maybe we don't feel the benefit of that straight away, but maybe, after many years and after continual efforts, we see a compounding return in our quality of life and in our happiness and in our choices. Another topic we spoke about was trusting your own decisions. To be honest, this is more of a note to self for when I look back at these videos, because something I wanted to remind myself, but I hope it also is of help. and that is like to trust our own decisions and trust our own inner compass. Something that I struggle with. In many different walks of life, sometimes I've had like a good investment idea and I've been talked out of it, and that's cost me quite a lot of money. So it was tangibly, like financially tangibly felt, let's say. At other times, maybe at work, maybe in relationships, not backing myself, yeah, I mean, so much to say that really important to back your own decisions. Only you know what's best for you, and we all have this one life, unless you believe in reincarnation, as a friend of mine does, who I was chatting to today. We, you know, our decisions stick. Maybe in some ways related to some of the other things we spoke about earlier. Trusting yourself and building that relationship with that internal dialogue. But yeah, certainly something that I would like to improve. For that reason, advice can be a little dangerous too. Getting a bit of bridge background for you, for all the engineers, the frothy engineers who love structures, civil engineers, of which I'm not, would have some appreciation for. Like advice, when somebody tells you what to do, implies that they know better than you, you know, how you should lead your life and what you should do in that moment. But ultimately, you know, obviously not when we're young, but ultimately when we reach a certain age, you know, our own internal compass, if that's properly developed, will give us the best guidance. When I say internal compass, I'm not limiting that purely to logical, rational reasoning. I'm also thinking things like intuition, gut feel, and that kind of stuff. Even, you know, divine inspiration. It's you know, making a decision is to make the right decision. There's no right decision. Like, life is infinitely complex, and there's so many first order, second order, third order effects of a decision, ripple on effects, etc. Extreme example would be a butterfly effect. But that there's no right decision, you know, that as in there's no way to know. There's no way to predict the future. So it's kind of somewhat of an, you know, an abstract topic. But yeah, we're faced with big decisions in our lives, and then we make them to the best of our ability, and it pays to trust ourselves. It's interesting to look at the two bridges behind me, and look at the way they've integrated with the laws of physics and hydraulics, or incorporated the you know, the natural effects. You can see the older bridge at at the foundations of, I think they're called piers, the legs of the bridge, let's say, for the uneducated like myself. They're rounded at the base, and they have a sort of a smooth flow around them. The new bridge, which as you can see is built like a brick shithouse, is literally just huge square concrete blocks, not at all working with nature and the natural hydraulic properties of water and liquid flow. And I've always been interested in nature and the way nature works and the way nature works best. And you look at rivers, I mean, there's a lot of power here, but there's no square edges. There's all smooth lines, and I kind of took that approach with like calibrating active control systems, even. So you could have totally square lines. There was nothing preventing you because it was all done actively. But I always found the best results were from smooth lines, and you could feel the difference driving the car. Certainly in the case of these bridges, there are better ways of doing things. That's an idea actually that I've taken from. I've been inspired, you could say, partly subconsciously, in this little chat, from some of the things I found on the Gaudi in the Gaudi building in Lyon, and he was very much inspired by nature, and he based a lot of his work on nature, for example, the base of a tree, how the roots form and how they go into the soil, and he'd build a building shaped like that, and there were multiple other examples, but we can get a bit clever and think we know best. We can get into the ego, but often the geniuses, like Gaudi, they were inspired by something they saw as greater than themselves. That's an idea that my favourite philosopher and Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius, was also fond of, being in tune with nature. As is often the way with my explanations of things, the order doesn't necessarily come out in the best and most chronological fashion, but I just happened upon interesting bit of information which makes quite a lot of sense, stacks up for the more interested listeners, and that is that they built a dam. They dammed the river in 1962, and actually moved some of the buildings from down along the river up here onto the hill. And this staircase that I'm sitting on was moved from the bridge that was built in the Middle Ages to the current location, and at the same time they built the extremely attractive bridge that we discussed earlier.